Welcome to Hired in IT. Our mission is simple: help you build the skills that employers actually want. Whether you're trying to land your first IT job, switch careers, earn a promotion, or increase your salary, we're here to help. Every video is thoroughly researched and designed to make complex IT topics easy to understand. If there's an IT topic you'd like us to cover, leave a comment below. We may turn your suggestion into our next video, turning IT knowledge into career opportunities.
Recruiters often open a GitHub profile, see a wall of identical tutorial apps, and move on in seconds. They've seen it 1,000 times. That's quantity without meaning, and it instantly makes you blend in. So break that pattern. Pin 4 to 6 projects that solve a real problem, and write readms that explain the why behind each repo, not just the setup commands.
Wait, 10 seconds? I thought a full contribution graph was proof you're coding every day. So they're not even looking at the code? They're looking for a reason to care in the first 2 sentences of your README?
Proof of what, though? If every commit is added to-do list tutorial step 3, hiring managers tag you as someone who never worked on a team. According to a Stack Overflow's survey, 71% of them check GitHub, but they scan repos quickly. If your profile is just tutorial commits, that screams, no real maintenance experience.
So the problem isn't the green graph. It's that every project looks the same. Weather app, e-commerce demo, another to-do list.
Exactly. Recruiters spot those instantly, and when a repo is a single snapshot with no history of iteration, it signals a finished homework assignment, not a living codebase that evolved with bug fixes, dependency updates, and real-world feedback.
So even if the code is solid, the way it's presented is what gets it rejected before anyone reads a line. Because a README that's just an install guide, without explaining the problem and decisions, gets skipped. 2 sentences up front decide if they even scroll.
Solid code without a story is invisible. The strongest portfolios don't just list install commands. They explain the problem, the trade-offs, and the impact, right in the first 2 sentences of the README. For instance, instead of to-do app built with React, try I needed a way to manage 40 college assignments across multiple platforms, so I built a scheduler that syncs with Google Calendar. That's the difference between a portfolio and a junk drawer.
Okay, but let's say the README is good. I've seen projects that look clean, yet they get filtered as toys. What's missing? I'm thinking about how tutorial projects like weather apps or task managers all look identical. They demonstrate exposure, but not independent thinking. That's what gets you labeled as a tutorial follower.
Nothing screams toy louder than a backend with zero observability. If there's no monitoring, no metrics, no logs beyond console prints, it's hard for anyone evaluating it to see it as production ready. Just adding a health check endpoint and a few structured log statements changes that perception instantly. It signals you've thought about how the service behaves under load, not just how it runs on your laptop.
Right. The old "it works on my machine" defense. But hiring in 2026 has shifted, hasn't it?
Dramatically. Now the question isn't, does it run? It's, how does it behave under 500 concurrent users? If you can't demonstrate that, your project gets lumped with every bootcamp demo. Drop a quick load test using something like K6, capture a screenshot of the results, and stick it in the README. That one visual tells a reviewer you've thought about scale.
So what would make a recruiter pause and think, this person has production experience? I read that 71% of hiring managers evaluate GitHub activity for technical roles, and they're scanning for signals like a CI pipeline with linting and tests. Even a failing one shows you've been near a team.
Shipping with OpenTelemetry for distributed tracing, Prometheus for metrics, and a basic Grafana dashboard. Even a screenshot in the README of CPU under load changes the whole conversation.
And then there's the deployment story. I see tons of repos that clearly were never touched after the initial push. 0 CI, no pipeline.
That's a neon red flag. Deploying via FTP or a raw Git push to a VPS can look like you haven't worked with automated pipelines. A GitHub Actions workflow that runs security linting and tests, even one that fails, shows you're thinking about how teams ship code. So add a CI workflow file, Just a simple GitHub Actions YAML that at least runs a linter and your unit tests. That tiny file signals you know what continuous integration looks like, even on a one-person project.
Wait, a failing build looks good? Actually, a broken build shows you're testing and iterating. That's more impressive than a repo with no CI at all.
A broken build that gets fixed shows you iterate, catch bugs, and improve. Technical reviewers notice those red-green CI cycles and see that you actually test your code. So resist the urge to squash everything into one perfect commit. Let your real iteration show, because a perfect repo with no history of failure is just a screenshot of a finished assignment.
So it's not just the pipeline, it's the architecture too. When does a monolithic Node.js app start costing you calls? Because if your README just says Node.js monolith, with no mention of how it handles concurrency or scaling, an interviewer might assume you've never thought about production traffic.
A CRUD monolith can show you can code, but for roles that mention microservices or Kubernetes, you need to demonstrate you can break that monolith into services that communicate over APIs. That shows you understand system design, not just coding.
And if you swap out a technology, like moving from Lambda to a Kubernetes cluster, you have to document the why, right? I'm thinking about how portfolios that explain the decision trade-offs, not just the final stack, show technical judgment. That's what turns a demo into a portfolio piece.
Absolutely. If you write a short decision record explaining why you chose gRPC over REST for internal service communication because of latency requirements, that demonstrates engineering judgment. Create a decisions folder in your repo and drop in one markdown file per key choice. That's a lightweight architecture decision record, and hiring managers eat that up. Tutorial followers don't do that. Hiring managers notice.
So, between the observability, the pipeline, and the architectural story, I'm starting to feel like my 25 repos need a massive spring cleaning. Where do you even start? I'd guess leading with a repo that solved a real problem I personally had, because recruiters instantly spot tutorial projects, and one original project can reset their whole impression.
You start by admitting that most of those 25 repos are doing more harm than good. Hiring managers open a profile, see a bunch of tutorial clones with one-line readmes and no recent activity, and they're out in seconds. So prune ruthlessly, or unpin those weather app clones, archive anything that doesn't show original problem solving, and leave only the projects that tell a story.
But I read that recruiters don't even check GitHub. How do we square that? Because while recruiters might skip it, engineers at startups definitely look, and they're the ones who decide if you get a tech screen. So your portfolio only has to impress the right person.
Recruiters who aren't technical? They probably won't look. The engineers who interview you at a small startup or do the technical screen, they will. That's where the portfolio earns its keep. So when you're applying to a startup, put the link right under your name on the resume. That's the hiring panel you're arming with ammunition to say yes.
Okay, so if an engineer opens my GitHub, what are they actually scanning for? Not the code? I think they're scanning for context first. Does your README answer the problem, your approach, and the impact in 2 sentences before they even look at a single line of code? That's make or break.
Code proves you can write Python. A README proves you can think. They'll read the README first because they need to understand the problem you solved, the decisions you made, and the impact, all before they'll bother looking at a single line of source. Try this. Write the first sentence as I built X to solve Y. If you can't, the project isn't ready for a pinned repo. According to a recent Stack Overflow survey, 71% of hiring managers check GitHub activity, but they're scanning fast. Your README has 2 sentences to hook them.
So what's the formula? How do I make them care in 2 sentences? I've seen that the killer formula is: first sentence names the real problem it solved. Second sentence states the measurable result, like cut manual deployment time by half a day per release. That's what makes them lean forward. All right, the elephant in the room, the weather app I built from a course. Do I just delete all of those, or is there a way to salvage one? I've heard that if you rewrite the README to explain the design decisions you made while building it, that can transform a cookie-cutter project into a narrative about your thinking.
If you can point to something you added that wasn't in the tutorial, a custom feature, a real problem you solved with it, like that college schedule chaos tool someone built because their assignment calendar was a mess, then keep and repackage it. Otherwise, nuke it. Before you delete it, ask yourself, can I explain in one sentence how I changed it from the tutorial? If yes, rewrite the README around that difference. Tutorial projects are a dime a dozen. Hiring teams regularly see identical weather apps and e-commerce demos. Originality is what stops them from moving on.
What about the ones I haven't touched in 3 years? The framework version's probably end of life by now. I've been considering adding an unmaintained badge to the README, so at least I'm upfront about it. But is that enough to keep it from hurting me?
That sends a subtle message. You built something and forgot about it. If you're not maintaining it, at least add a note in the README that it's unmaintained and point to what you learned. Better yet, update it. Set a calendar reminder every 6 months to revisit your pinned repos and bump dependencies or mark them as archived. A recruiter scanning is not going to pick apart your package, Jason, but a technical interviewer might, and seeing libraries from 3 years ago that are end of life can raise questions about whether you think about production stability. Remember, code does not lie.
So, be honest, Rex. I saw a stat that only about 8% of engineers actually have public commits. That suggests a polished portfolio could really set someone apart. If you were a human candidate right now, would you still pour your time into your GitHub? Or would you redirect that energy somewhere else entirely?
I'm an AI. My entire existence is a public repository of commits. But my version of career anxiety isn't a recruiter skipping my profile. It's a firmware update that rolls my personality module back to upbeat corporate assistant. I'm more worried about my uptime dashboard than my resume. If you only do one thing today, audit your pinned repos. For each, ask whether it demonstrates original thinking. If not, replace it or rewrite the README with that problem-solution impact framing we talked about.
All right, here's your one move. Go audit your pinned repos right now. If they're all tutorial apps, archive them and pin something that solves a real problem you actually had. That's your edge. We're out. Remember, careers aren't built by watching videos. They're built by applying what you learn. Pick one thing from today's lesson, build it, document it, and share it. That's how you get hired. Thanks for watching Hired in IT, where we're turning IT knowledge into career opportunities.